Hello and welcome to Project Afterlife, a short little game developed by Kisuarts, available on itch.io. Apparently, it is a horror visual novel. I guess we'll see. It doesn't look like a typical visual novel to me, but, just from the screenshots. Let's see. I'm part of a team studying what happens to human consciousness after we die. What happens when we die? Where do we go? What does it feel like? Is there a heaven? A hell? We didn't know, but we wanted to. I suppose that's where everything went wrong. Right out of the gate. Did you, do the thing where you unleash demons into the research facility and some guy needs to put on a spacesuit and get a shotgun and shoot everybody? No. We wanted to play God, or at least learn the rules of the game. To sit behind the curtain for just a moment, if only so we could know what to expect when the lights went out and we said that final goodnight. I'm telling you now, swearing to you that we never intended for things to go wrong the way that they did. It's weird that I guess she's giving narration, like that cliche narration after, everything went down, I guess. The people that lost their lives knew what they were getting into. They signed releases, paperwork, yes. Sign your lives away with paper. They agreed to let us do what we did, just so long as we promised to handsomely compensate their families. This sounds like, like SCP or whatever. And we did. We held up our end of the bargain to the tune of $13 million. But things like this, they never work out the way they're meant to. I knew that, I did. I think that on some level all of us did, but the people who were funding us had no idea. They wanted results. Be messy, they said, if that's what it takes. Do whatever you need to do to figure out what happens in the sequel to life, and make it snappy because the funding's running on an hourglass, and that started slipping. So we cut corners, we pushed people in ways that in retrospect were irresponsible, dangerous. But we did it for the common good. We did it for you, for all of us, for the benefit of future generations who could look death in the eye with the horror of not knowing what came next. It was a good thing. It really was. We called it Project Afterlife. Title drip. Connect the diodes, or diodes, please. Connect the diodes, please. Amanda, do we have a connection? We do. Ready when you are. Initiate Afterlife sequence. Oh, you can click on things. Wow. Again, it looks weird. It's like if I think this game is made in Unity, even though it looks like an RPG Maker game, but it's actually a visual novel with, I guess it seems like with point and click, adventure gameplay. I don't know. I can click on stuff. Security screen. The screen shows all the personnel who have entered and exited the operation room. Open, close, open, close. We can see the vital signs of the subject here. The output console shows how the subject is reacting to the treatment. This is the input console. Here we specify all the different levels of fluids we need to revive our subjects. I guess we're doing experimentations in terms of we kill them and then we revive them. Wasn't that like a a thing that the Nazis did or something? I don't know. I might be making that up. They did really horrendous human experimentation that didn't lead anywhere. Did it for fun, I guess. But they would literally kill people and then revive them and then kill them again and revive them. To see, to research death, I guess. But it's really messed up. We transfer subjects to the lab in these sealed caskets. Keeps them fresh. Gotta keep them fresh. And a power supply. It's a power supply for all the equipment down here. In case of an emergency, we can shut the power here. You know what this art reminds me of, actually? It reminds me of Stardew Valley. I think that's what this game reminds me of. It's freaking Stardew Valley, except it's weird human experimentation. Subject 1. Female in her 30s. Suffered catastrophic liver failure. Excessive use of alcohol related. They've been dead for 3 days. No one has ever come back after 3 days. Okay. At least in terms of ethics, I guess they only use people who've already died on their own, maybe. The point was to let them taste the cold kiss of death and then tear their soul back into the land of living long enough to give us a play-by-play of what happened while they were away. The 3-day timeline was a tricky one. Even though the corpse was dead, even though the cadaver was cold and beginning to cellularly decompose, we needed to keep it fresh enough to host life. Don't get me wrong, the life it hosted didn't last long, but it lasted long enough. I still remember the pulse of excitement that shot through the room when the woman opened her eyes. Okay. Again, they're doing, I don't know, what do you call it? I don't know, it's like weird, like, post-narration, They're like, what's the word? They're like reenacting? That's not the right word, but they're remembering what happened after it already happened. To me, that kind of kills the tension, to be honest, because that implies that she survives no matter what. But anyway, initiating afterlife sequence. Agni, can you hear my voice? Where am I? You're with friends, safe. Do you remember the study you agreed to be a part of? Death. That's right, Agni. We wanted to know what happens to the soul after death, and you agreed to take that journey and return to us. You're the first human being. You're the first human being to have done so. Congratulations. We belong to them. Agni, I'm sorry. To whom are you referring to? We belong to the forgotten. Older. What comes next is worse than any hell. The machine monitoring her vitals began to beep violently, indicating levels were grossly out of range. Okay, she exploded. Agni Mick had died for the second time. Again, it reminds me of like, I've read like a few like SCP, I guess, what do you call it? I guess SCP Stories, it's kind of written in that like, tense, where like it's already happened. It's like a report, Anyway, we had her corpse carted to the morgue for an autopsy and discovered that her brain had substantially swelled up, causing her skull to crack open. Her heart had partially ruptured in her chest. And most bizarrely of all, her vocal cords had been seared, as if something had lit them aflame. Her results were ominous, to say the least, but we were intelligent enough to know that a sample size of 1 does not make a conclusion, so we eagerly awaited our second subject, Yes, she knows the scientific method. This one was a young girl named Charlotte. She'd been struck by a vehicle in a hit and run and fallen into a coma. She almost got isekai'd. Her parents never had the opportunity to say goodbye, and so they agreed to allow us to perform our study so long as they were there for her revival. Goodbye, Charlotte. Hey, Maya and Edgar. They're worried but hopeful. I don't know if he really wants this. Okay, so she was in a coma? She dead? Or did she die in her coma? I don't know. Vital signs, output, input. Yeah, same thing. No extra, like, new stuff here. Open? Oh, open. I don't know if this matters. Does that affect anything if I leave the door open? I don't know. Okay, just let's check if there's anything to click on. Alright. Initiate afterlife sequence. Subject 2, female, a teenager, was hit by a speeding vehicle. I clicked a few keys in the computer console, and the machine began its mechanical song. A moment later, the screen flashed green as it initiated its afterlife sequence. Charlotte's unmoving cadaver was filled with a myriad of chemicals and electrical pulses designed to shock her brain to functioning. The girl's feet began to twitch, then her fingertips. Her mother and father looked at one another, grasping hands as they waited for their daughter to return to them. Hopeful tears leaked from the corners of their eyes, their lips mouthing silent words of affirmation as they prepared to say goodbye to their daughter. But then... It's difficult to describe the sound of Charlotte's scream. I'm hesitant to say it was human, let alone the sound of a teenage girl. It sounds like a teenage girl. I mean, it sounded like generic female scream.mp3. It was most similar, I feel, to a drowning sheep. It was an anguished bleeding sound, one that seemed never-ending, and yet it told a terrifying story all on its own. Eventually, Charlotte's parents made a decision to pull the plug on their daughter. It was the second time they made the decision in a little under a week. Oh, okay. It was, okay, so it's implied that they, euthanized her when she was in the coma. The last subject was the one that's stuck with me, the one that haunts me to this day, and the reason I'm writing this now, sharing this with all of you. Yeah, again, it's written as like a report. His name was Jacob. He was sentenced to death after doing some gruesome things to some tribal villagers while traveling in South America. He'd been researching for material to a book he was writing called The Meaning of Life. Oh, what a coincidence. He participated in hundreds of rituals across dozens of tribes. He tried everything from peyote to DMT, leveraging any drug he could get his hands on that promised psychedelic insights. Things went wrong, however, when he went on a bloody rampage during a psychotic episode. Like, don't do drugs, kid. Don't do drugs, kids. Otherwise, you'll go on a psychotic rampage and murder people. That's why he approached our small project and asked to be included. When we informed him it was only for those suffering from terminal afflictions, he asked if he could be added to the list anyway, sort of like an organ donor. We agreed. Jacob was sent to an electric chair the following weekend. Alright. There's nothing wrong with trying to revive like a horrendous criminal who was participating in strange dark rituals that will probably give him dark powers as you revive them. Don't worry about it. Initiate afterlife sequence. Subject 3, male, nearing his 40s, was sentenced to death after killing multiple tribal villagers in South America. Once again, I watched from behind the glass. Once again, Roger waited patiently, a hopeful smile on his face. 20 seconds passed and nothing occurred, not so much as a twitch of a toe or a flick of an eyelash. Jacob's corpse remained every bit as dead as the day we carted him in. A minute went by, we saw no sign of resurrection. Amanda, can you check the monitors? I think it might be malfunctioning. I swallowed. I triple-checked the machines to make sure it was functioning to specification, just as it had the last 2 times. The wires checked out. The program was running to spec. All the diodes were in the correct place. I don't see any issues here. Maybe some people can't be brought back. Have you seen it? Jacob, do you remember the study you agreed to participate in? I remember everything. I've seen too much. And what was that? What came next after you died? Everything that I feared. The nightmares were real. What do you think happens after we die, Doctor? I'm not certain. We all believe different things, I suppose. We were hoping you could answer that for us, Jacob. We believe. We believe so many different things, and we are so desperately want them to be true. But the only truth is that we return to the forgotten. The forgotten. It was a phrase we heard before from Agni. I'd assume we referred to human beings, like those who have died in meaningless wars or in periods of widespread misfortune, and yet the emphasis that Jacob placed upon it. The forgotten. What are the forgotten? It was miraculous that he was standing at all, but that he remained living after several minutes was something neither of the other 2 subjects managed. And not to mention he's doing this thing where he's like walking like a zombie. Don't worry about that, I guess. Not what, but who. Our minds are finally made. They evolved over millennia to mask reality, to mask the bitter truth of the universe. You want to know what happens when we die? We return to the abyss that birthed us. I had a vision of the end. I saw our makers and they were dressed in dying stars in empty space. They were hopeless, empty, but just like us, they wanted medicine, a way to feel. We are their medicine. Our minds are primed for love, for joy, and for pleasure. And when we die, they feed on us. They leave our souls empty and rotting until we're rebirthed into the next human, a little less whole, a little less complete. A little closer to putting a bullet through our skulls. What else can you tell us? That we began with meaning, As they fed and we grew emptier, more incomplete. Collectively, the human soul withered. Look around you. You feel the rage, the hatred, and the pain. It's consuming the human race like a plague. And bit by bit, we're getting worse, not better. Soon we'll have nothing left to feel. No love, no joy, just emptiness. Roger's mouth hung open. His voice stuttered as he attempted to formulate a response, to articulate why he must be wrong. At least that's what I hoped for. I hope for anybody to stand up and say this was all a farce. An experiment had been compromised and none of this could be true, but nobody did. If you want to know what comes next, I can show you. Num num. Maybe, you know, should have like kept the gun with you or something when the zombie starts like walking like a zombie. Oh well. After that, our funding was pulled, our donor abandoned the project and scrubbed his involvement from any and all corporate records. As far as the scientific community was concerned, the experiments never occurred, and the findings didn't exist, but I did find a new job at a new place. It's called Umbrella Corporation. Anyway, but I remember because there's simply no way I could forget the haunting look in Agnes' eyes, the hopeless agony of Charlotte's screams, or the final message that Jacob delivered in a pool of blood on the linoleum. Why can't I say that word? In a pool of blood on the linoleum, and a pool of blood on the floor. It's just a floor. It was messy and easily missed. To the others, I think it must have looked like a common splatter, a simple side effect of his legs spasming in the pool of blood. But I know what I saw. The letters, though crooked and barely legible, were scorched in my memory like a cattle brand. They weren't so much a warning as they were words of advice, perhaps an answer to the question we set out to ask, and the question Jacob had set out to answer in his book. The meaning of life, he wrote, is to avoid the agony of death. Alright, there you go. Yeah, apparently this game, this game was actually based on like a, I guess, like a creepypasta, you know, or something like that. Maybe not creepypasta, but you know, like a little short story that someone wrote on Reddit or something like that. But there you go. All right, it was okay. Yeah, it was like an interesting little short little story. You know, it basically is, I would say, like a little like HP Lovecraftian kind of like little story. You know, I think that's basically what this game kind of was. You know, it's like very very much like, oh, you know, the afterlife is like when we get consumed by the elder gods or something like that. I mean, he didn't say elder gods, but basically that's what it is. You know, you get consumed by the elder gods, and then you just play things for the cosmic horrors in the galaxy or something like that. I don't know. Yeah, so it's kind of like that kind of story, you know, that kind of horror. It was all right. I definitely like written like a SCP report, you know, basically it's like written like in past tense. So it's not really like a scary in the sense of like, oh no, it's a monster, you gotta run away from the monster and stuff, but like it's more like, you know, it's supposed to be existential. I don't know. How I feel about it though is like, I mean, it's not bad. It's like it's written well, I think, actually. I think the actual writing itself wasn't bad at all, actually. At all. I don't know. Why am I repeating that? Anyway, the writing is good. But like, I don't know what it is, but I actually prefer, because it's so subjective, right? But like, I felt the writing, while well made, was a bit too, I don't know how to describe it. It felt too clean, I guess, you know? I don't know what that means, but like, it felt too sterile, you know? There's no, like, I don't know, fun. There's no fun, like, I don't know. I don't describe it, but like, there's no like terror, you know, there's no despair, you know, there's none of that. The narrator just felt like, as like, and this thing happened, and then like a guy, you know, told us that the human race is just being controlled by the forgotten, and whatever, well, you know, and then I just left, and I ate some dinner, and, you know, went to sleep. You know, it's like, it just kind of like, it's very casual, I guess. I think it's because of the past, you know, the way it's written, you know. I don't know. When I think of SCP reports, actually, even though it is written that in that way, like in past tense, it always kind of ends like in like very horrible ways, right? You know, usually the writer loses their mind, or like, you know, something crazy happens, or, you know, they live the rest of their life in fear or something like that. You know, it doesn't have to be like that. That's a little cliche, I guess. You know, I'm not the writer, but you know, it felt like too like detached from the actual thing that happened, right? Even though I know it's supposed to be like creepy and disturbing and it's supposed to give you like an existential crisis, I get what they're trying to do, but I don't know, the way it's actually just done is like, it just felt like not scary at all. Even though, you know, it doesn't have to be scary, but you know, I didn't feel anything. You know, maybe my soul is affected by the forgotten. You know, I don't feel anything. I have no feelings, no emotions. Oh no. Anyway. They dialed back on. Maybe they should have dialed back on the edge. But it's funny though. I actually want more edge. You know, I'm weird like that. But I actually wanted it to be more edgy. It wasn't edgy enough, to be honest, in my opinion. Anyway, I have the opposite opinion here. I wanted it to go harder, not less. You know, if it went any less, it'd be kind of boring. You know. But you know, this game, I would say overall though, it wasn't boring necessarily though. It was still kind of good. I still felt like it was still a solid story. Like if this was like just not like a game, it's just like a short story by itself. I mean, it is based on a short story, so you know, it's just an interesting little read for like 10 minutes. Yeah, that's why I felt. You know, I just felt like maybe not pretentious, but again, detached. You know, it didn't feel like we're like in the story. It didn't feel like immersive. You know, that's the thing. I like immersive stories more than just like, I don't know what this is, I guess, but you know, it's fine. It wasn't bad. I mean, other than that, I guess the art was fine. I guess it didn't really like. I didn't personally like it that much because I'm obviously a weeb. So if you drew it like more like an anime style, I actually like it more. Again, it reminds me of Stardew Valley, right? Stardew Valley's art was like, I don't know. This is funny how someone made a mod actually in Stardew Valley that made the portraits look more anime, you know, and I like that better. I like more anime-esque kind of style, obviously. But by itself, it just looks okay. It's all right. Yeah, I mean, there's a little gore at the end as well, I guess. Just like one scene, really. I mean, a little bit. It's like eyes popping, I guess. Heads exploding a little bit. But, you know, not too bad. I don't know. Maybe I'm just desensitized. But yeah, I guess like the idea that this is a visual novel, it's weird, you know. It's kind of weird. I mean, it's unique, I guess, because when I think of visual novel, I think of a very certain setup, right? It's like usually like a 2D, you know, portraits and like. It's like it's made in Ren'Py, you know, it's like text box. I mean, there was text boxes and everything. I don't know, it is interesting though. I actually find the format interesting, actually. You know, it doesn't look like a visual novel just by looking at the screenshots, but it is actually. You kind of like go through dialogue and, you know, and the story just happens for the most part. Not much like actual interaction, which is fine because that's what the visual novel is. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a unique, at the very least, very unique format, I feel like. Even though I mean, again, it's essentially just a visual novel, but it doesn't feel like a visual novel, you know? I don't know. It's weird. I don't know, scrap it. You enjoy the dryness of a lot of SCPs? Maybe. I don't know. I prefer, like, you know, when I think of SCPs, I think of, like, I don't know, like horrible things happening, you know? Well, I don't know. I can't think of one off the top of my head. But you know, like usually like it starts off normal, but then it like eventually, you know, a bad thing happens in the SCP and then it starts to devolve into insanity and the person who was writing the report goes crazy, or you know, it's usually like a person writing a report on like another person who went crazy, you know, or something. Anyway, whatever. But I guess it's just personal taste. Because, you know, SCPs are just like, as far as I know, they're written by like multiple people, right? It's just like, it's like kind of like role play when you think about it. You know, it's just like a bunch of people like making up like horror stories. But all right, anyway, enough rambling. Project Afterlife, it was pretty good, I would say, even though it's like a little short, but that's fine. But yeah, there you go. I guess if you're on YouTube, if you didn't know, I stream these games live on Twitch, so check me out over there if you're interested. And I also have other games available on the channel, so you can look for those if you want. Thanks for watching. Until next time, See you then.